Hello, I'm Blake Bridge. I am a rising sophomore at Yale University. I'm thinking about studying something in politics, economics, particularly with the international focus. I've done Talk Abroad for about a whole semester now over the summer. I've done, I'd say about 20, 30-minute sections with Talk Abroad, and I've had a great experience.
My name is Angus Anderson. I'm a recent graduate from Denison University out in the Columbus, Ohio area, where I was an economics major and history minor. At Denison, I started taking German my sophomore year as we were required to take some sort of foreign language for at least 2 semesters. From the sort of get-go in the early classes, we always had a Talk Abroad requirement where it was usually 5 conversations over the course of the semester. But one of the great benefits of having a program like Talk Abroad is you're hearing someone who's completely fluent in the language and speaks it every day, speak it and register in how they speak. It's a little bit different from having a professor speak it whose voice you understand, who might not have that native accent or inflection points.
So in class, obviously my classmates are around my age, but it's a different environment. The language is a little bit more formal. You don't necessarily speak about sports, for example, in the same way that I would speak about sports to somebody who's my age and also in Germany and knows, some words that are local to Germany, but you might not learn in class.
Earlier this year, I got a job offer in Berlin, Germany, which I accepted. And when COVID hit, one of the best ways to kind of practice when I would keep my German up to speed when I was at home, besides just doing grammar exercises, was the Talk Abroad conversation. So I did probably around 20 conversations from when I was sent home to when I left to Berlin. And those conversations, they weren't structured like the normal ones I had at school, but they were just as helpful.
Yeah, so at first it is definitely a little bit daunting. I had some German experience going into these summer classes that I took, but obviously I wouldn't say I felt comfortable doing a full 30-minute session with a native speaker.
Well, in the beginning, I think there's always I was very nervous because I was using my second language and I was always pretty novice with that. So there's definitely that fear of 1, talking to someone new they're meeting for the first time, 2, using your language and making all those mistakes.
I do feel more interested in actually wanting to travel to the place where my language is from. I really want to go to Germany now because I feel like what I've learned in class and through the sessions would allow me to get around Germany and have a fun time and know a lot and practice my skills. But before that, just taking the German class, I didn't have such an urge to necessarily travel to Germany. This really makes me want to meet other native speakers and talk with them.
One of my partners is actually originally from Egypt, and her parents are German, and she studies in Germany. And she gave me a lot of tips about making the move abroad from a second country into Germany, sort of the bureaucratic steps I would need to handle, best ways to do that. Troubleshooting speaking your second language, living in a shared apartment, just little life tips.
I have to say, at least on Talk Abroad's part, you guys do an excellent job picking people who are very open and allowing the people doing the sessions to feel comfortable, at least even if your German skills or another language is not too good. But I would definitely say trying to compare the two, that the Talk Abroad sessions definitely helped. And I can compare my German classes when I didn't have Talk Abroad and my German classes when I did. I definitely felt like I learned more and I became more comfortable with the Talk Abroad sessions than those without. I'd have to say it depends on how many sessions you do, but just doing the sessions really gets you prepared and at least makes you feel comfortable with what you've already learned. I'm sure that people taking a German class at Yale, we both learn the same things, but having to implement it is definitely a big jump, and this program really helps you take that jump. So
I will say that Talk Abroad really added a unique aspect to language learning, so it wasn't sort of that standardized, here's your textbook, here's your workbook, go through that, we're going to do grammar exercises, speak with your classmates. It was a nice change in routine. and that made learning the language fresh and a little bit more practical.
Hi, welcome, and thanks for joining us here. My name's Todd. I'm the president of TalkAbroad. This is the second in a series of 7 workshops that are all looking at how adding conversations with native speakers into your curriculum can change and improve in different ways. The first 4 are looking specifically at different themes. The last 3 are going to be focused on implementation. So if you hear things during these workshops that you want to add into your curriculum, stick around for those last 3 about implementation. This session is going to be focusing on the World Readiness Standards. How do we take students that are learning, that are at universities or in high schools, and prepare them to interact and to work in a global community as they transition out of education? TalkAbroad can fit in right there, having students interacting with native speakers, engaging with different cultures, building relationships, and being able to compare. I'm going to pass this over to our co-host for the day. We have Daniel Trigo, who's an instructional designer at Michigan State University, and we've got Imbal Mazar from Drake University joining us. Go ahead, take it away, you two.
All right, welcome to workshop number 2 on TalkAbroad. Today we're going to be looking at ACTful World Readiness Standards and building connections to community and seeing how using TalkAbroad in the classroom can help us build stronger connections and help our students build stronger connections. My name is Daniel and I am at Michigan State University. I'm a digital media specialist and have taught Spanish for many, many years.
I'm Imbal. I teach Spanish language and culture at Drake University.
Cool. All right, so ACTful World Readiness Standards. Imbal, hopefully everyone has a little bit of a picture of what those are. There's a lot of them. Could you give us like a brief synopsis? Like when I say World Readiness Standards, what is it that comes to your mind first?
So what I think about is students being able to learn the language in a way that they are able to travel, to live abroad, and to engage in meaningful relationships, conversations, professional relationships in the countries where they are going abroad, and based on the language skills that they're developing.
Yeah, awesome. I always just think of like pretty much anything outside of the classroom.
Right.
Right.
Yeah,
so you've got the class readiness standards,
right,
and the world readiness standards.
Yeah, you don't have to travel across the world. You can leave the classroom and there's a lot to interact with as well. So
right. And obviously nowadays we all just sit in our houses and connect, right?
And long to leave the classroom, to leave abroad, right? Not the classroom.
So yeah, so we're going to look and see about how using curriculum involving TalkAbroad can help students build this cultural competence and be able to participate in a global community. So we're going to take a look at a couple of videos. Again, we want to see what professors are doing. We have our classes to talk about, but there's all kinds of people using TalkAbroad, and I'm really excited to see how other people are bringing this into their classroom, and we'll take a look. And I believe today we have a lot of French videos for this one. So,
fantastic.
I mean, I tend to always focus on Latin America and Spanish. That's what I speak and teach. So it's always cool to hear what's similar, but also some of the differences with the other languages too.
Absolutely.
I'm not simply using TalkAbroad for the linguistic practice. I want the cultural knowledge. So they have to talk to speakers from different countries, and then they have to bring in, we're studying, different parts of the French-speaking world in my classes. By the end of the year, we've studied, French in the Americas, French in the Pacific Islands, French in Asia, French in Europe, French in Africa. And so they need to speak to speakers in those different areas and then come back in and talk about the culture and what they've learned from their speakers. And so all of our conversations have that cultural component. And my students need to be paying attention to that so that they can bring that into the projects and the assignments that we're doing in class.
Cool. So how does that compare to your experience? Different speakers, different cultures?
so sometimes there's so many options in TalkAbroad. Sometimes I have to indicate, if I need somebody to be speaking, you cannot do anyone from Spain. This is a Latin American woman of influence class. Don't pick anybody from Spain, because there's so many options in that sense. But, there are one great thing about TalkAbroad is the ability for students to see accents around the world. But experience them, right? To listen and experience them, not in a movie and not in a video that you're watching, but to engage with somebody with an accent. And that sometimes I actually include that as one of the questions, like, were you able to understand? Was there anything that you could understand? Did you notice any differences? Something else I think about, Daniel, is gestures, right? So across different countries, there are different gestures. There's different, colloquial language that they might use. So it's really fun to be able to really tell students, pay more attention than the actual just vocabulary and language and whatever else that's being used. Pay attention to your interactions and how people are using their hands and the words that they're selecting to speak and how are they different across countries. So we're able to do that across a global setting, and that's cool.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think I love TalkAbroad because the days that traditionally I always felt least equipped to teach were those old textbook culture days, right? And especially in that like first 4 semesters, like, oh, today we're going to learn about Chile, and like this is their currency, this is the flag, these are a couple of things, and I'm standing up here and I'm like, I've never been to Chile.
I know.
I don't.
Traitor, imposter here.
I might know like one Chileno, and like you could read all of this stuff. Like, why am I up here as an instructor, like bridging that? But now all of a sudden with TalkAbroad, like that alleviates that pressure from me, 100%. that like sense of like dread that I would feel going in. Like, what if someone asked me a question? I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah, about the government, right? Or the currency, or you might know the currency, but we don't know everything about every country. We're not political scientists and historians and whatever else. So it's really great to not say, read this piece of paper about this country, and to say, speak to this person.
Right. And now you're equipped to go to Chile, right? Like, we talked about all these things, and so I think that's just wonderful that it really does bring in expertise, right? From all over, in a way that's easy for us. I don't have to go find that myself. And
it's funny you said, I really honestly had never thought about that, but I also did not enjoy that one-page code, unless it was Guatemala, Costa Rica, Honduras, Panama, country I had lived in, right?
I've lived in Mexico for 17 years, so it's like, oh, we could do like every state in Mexico.
Let's break down Mexico the entire semester.
Guys, we can go deep here.
Don't ask me what
to talk about the Guatemala. I've traveled. I spent a month there a long time ago, but like we start going to other places. It's like, all right, cool. So let's take a look. I think a specific example would be really cool to hear about.
If there's something that seems to be confusing to somebody or an interesting cultural point, then we can talk about those things. For example, back in the spring, I didn't assign my students to talk about COVID, but one of the students was talking about her own experiences, feeling cooped up and everything, and her partner was in Tunisia, I believe. Right? And she was like, I don't really feel a difference because as a female in Tunisia, I really don't get to go out very much my own anyway. I can only go out with, a family member, with a brother, under these circumstances. And so like, hello, there's a big cultural experience for us to be able to unpack and talk about. And what privileges do we have in the United States that don't exist everywhere? Right? So those are kinds of things that we would unpack in class afterwards at the 100 level.
Yeah. So it's culture and personalization there, right? They were able to relate and to, who cares what the assignment was? Let's connect on a real level about world issues, about your reality versus mine right now, about something. I love that you brought up the COVID example though, because my students, every conversation that I listened to during this period, quarantine across different parts of the world, they connected on that, and they were looking for that connection because many people were not holding live classes. And so they were looking for that. And they were able to get that connection and say, what's going on with your family? How's your family? And the partners always asked, how are you? And then they got to talk a little bit about this with someone else. And all the conversations had a little bit of this. And I thought that was really special and important for the students to have that interaction with someone, to just talk, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I think that video is kind of standalone. There's nothing we can add to that,
No.
right?
No.
I mean, like, and I've actually traveled, I've spent a lot of time in Tunisia, but like, I could never articulate, not being a female Tunisian, like I could never articulate that the same way to my students, even though I understand it, right? And so that to me is like, there's nothing better than that. And I think you mentioned too, the COVID issue, because everyone in the world is experiencing this in a different way.
Yeah.
And I think it's been really cool to hear students talk with other people who, I mean, there's kind of the shared grief among the whole world right now, right?
Yes. For the first time in our memory. Yeah.
Yeah. In this generation, especially, like there's just not that shared grief in a world sense. And so like to be able to connect with someone like, hey, how are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, what might restrictions look like or not look like where you are? How do you get together with friends? I think it's just, again, it's very personal. It's right now, but that is the stuff that does prepare you, and you can get so much insight of culture.
And something else
later.
Not just that, I was also able to learn more about my students because of it, because I got to hear my aunt is in the hospital right now. And that's something that they wouldn't share directly, or I didn't know to ask, or didn't want to ask or pry, but I got to listen and know what my students were experiencing at that moment on a very personal level for them. And so it gave me a better understanding of how I can address this in my class, or how I should change my assignments or deadlines or whatever else based on listening to the students and everything they were experiencing. And it made it more real for me to understand their reality. And honestly, back to the personalization,
yeah,
that was important for us.
Yeah, but in a cool way, like the professor-student relationship, right? I think that even opens up some more that way. That's kind of maybe not the first thing you would think about with using TalkAbroad.
No.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Let's look at one more. And
yeah, there were a few. First of all, we were realizing in our programs generally and across languages that our students, not surprisingly, we know this from data, they have the most difficulty developing speaking proficiency, and so I wanted to do more to have them develop their speaking skills, and also, not just because at the end of the program, we want them to be able to go out and actually use the language for work or for travel or whatever their goal may be. But, we, like many institutions, have teacher preparation programs. And in the state of Michigan, those students have to test at advanced low in oral proficiency, or they're not certified. And our non-native speaker students just were not doing that. And so as a department, we realized we have to do more. And this seemed, and so we were having these conversations at the time when I first learned about TalkAbroad. So that was another reason beyond just, having students develop speaking proficiency that they want and need, having our teachers be able to be certified, because to have them go through our program and then not, be told, sorry, it's just not enough. That's just not going to happen. And also, in the French program, I'm the only full-time French faculty. And as of this year, I'm the only French faculty. And they hear an awful lot of my voice, even though my curriculum includes a lot of authentic resources, and they do get to hear native speaker voices. There's just no substitute for that native speaker interaction. And as a non-native speaker, I can't give that to them. And it's something that, as I'm sure anybody who teaches a language or has learned a language, speaking with native speakers is really intimidating, even if you're a proficient speaker. And so I wanted them to have that opportunity and sort of desensitize them to speaking with native speakers, and also have them develop some confidence and a feeling of self-efficacy. So in the future, they could participate confidently in those conversations.
So Julie brought up some interesting things talking about proficiency, but the only full-time French professor. So I think when we think about world readiness, it's easy to create. It's not easy to even create this, but in this classroom you have this. I usually use the word contrived because it is in a way. It's like, oh, here we only speak French.
Yep.
It's like, we all speak English.
Right.
We all speak, so it's like, it's not completely authentic to use that word, but like outside of the classroom, what access to the world do people have? And I think you mentioned it, Drake University, like, so what does access look like to the Spanish speaking world outside of the university?
So obviously, I mean, when I was living in Florida, there were people from all over the world in South Florida. Versus in Iowa and Des Moines, there is a lot of culture. There are people from all over the world. Are they interacting with them? Or, sometimes not as much, and it takes a lot to encourage. And I've noticed that because of Talk Abroad, they are more comfortable interacting in personal form, right? And when they see a person and that they can speak to in Spanish. And there are a lot of people from Latin America, and a lot of people who speak Spanish also who were born in the US. But, having that one professor only, your entire 4 years, that's the only professor that will teach you how to speak. That's the only accent you will listen to. That's the only, the person chooses the same vocabulary when they speak. It's not our fault, right? We can't do anything about it, but what can we do about it? I mean, about our own speaking, what can we do to enhance that and add more opportunities for them so that they can truly go to different countries and speak with different people and not feel intimidated once they do?
Yeah.
And that's this.
Yeah, that definitely speaks to that intimidation. I might even disagree with Julie, maybe partially, like, it doesn't have to be intimidating to speak to someone, a speaker of a language, but I think what you mentioned, like, especially that first time you talk to someone who has a different accent or uses a different vocabulary set, all of a sudden, like, you're not in your wheelhouse, right? Like, things got like, oh, I think I know this, or I thought I knew this, but now in this situation I don't. And I think that's a hard thing to, obviously, as language learners, that's part of the game, but
and I say that we have to
reconcile that.
Yeah, we have several professors from various different parts of the world in our department, and I notice that when they have me for the first time, it sometimes takes them a couple of weeks to get used to the way that I speak and the words that I use and the speed in which I speak. So the more access you have and the more variety you have, the more comfortable you will be immediately speaking with somebody and understanding them. Rather than having to warm up to it for a couple of weeks, right? So it's preparing them culturally.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that is a good reason to attend our session on input, right? A great segue. Cool. So I think that's all we have for today on the World Readiness Standards. Please join us for some of the other Talk Abroad workshops.
See you there.
Hi, my name is Jocelyn Cordero. I'm the Director of Human Resources, and I work full-time with Community of Partners.
Great. Thank you, Jocelyn. Thank you for being here with us today. We want to discuss and learn a little bit about you and your team and the work you're doing at Talk Abroad. How do you work and everything? So I'll have some questions for you. I would like, first of all, to know you a little bit better, to know who is Jocelyn, what have you been doing during these years at Talk Abroad, and a little bit about that.
Okay. Yo vivo en Costa Rica. y he trabajado para TalkAbroad por casi 10 años. Inicié haciendo conversaciones con los estudiantes en español y luego trabajé un poquito con lo que fue las evaluaciones y también con un grupo pequeño que tenía a cargo acá en Costa Rica. Em, y ahora estoy con recursos humanos.
Okay, great. And well, I know that if you are from Costa Rica, Spanish is your native language. But do you also speak English or any of the other languages that we have at TalkAbroad? How does that work for you?
Sí, yo hablo inglés, pero la mayor parte del tiempo hablo con los partners en español y el resto de los idiomas que tenemos acá no los hablo. Entonces tengo un equipo y estas personas se encargan de hacer evaluaciones en los diferentes idiomas que nosotros tenemos. Tenemos a Sandra, a Julia, Malek, Silvia, Kaori y Ana. Ellos hacen evaluaciones, ellos escuchan los videos y ven los videos también y van poniendo una evaluación con respecto o basados en la rúbrica de evaluación que todos nuestros partners pues ya conocen desde que empiezan a trabajar en TalkAbroad.
Okay, perfect. So you told me that you are the director of human resources at TalkAbroad. Tell me a little bit more about that. What does that mean? What do you do? What is your area working at with the partners and everything?
Ok, sí, lo primero que nos enfocamos es en el reclutamiento y esto lo hacemos basados en una proyección de acuerdo a historia, ¿verdad? De TalkAbroad y cuántas conversaciones hemos tenido en el pasado. También con coordinación con el equipo de ventas, entonces para asegurarnos de tener la cantidad correcta de personas para atender a los estudiantes. También damos entrenamiento a los partners nuevos. Tenemos un proceso bien estructurado con ellos, dando seguimiento con feedback también. Y también tenemos procesos para los partners que están acá regulares, ¿verdad? Ya activos trabajando con nosotros. Entonces también tenemos procesos para ellos de reentrenamiento, sesiones de feedback, darles materiales de apoyo y demás.
Perfect, great. So now I would like to ask you some specific questions about the work that you're doing with your team at TalkAbroad. And to start, I would like to know how do you manage the recruiting process? What strategies or how do you recruit people at TalkAbroad?
La mayoría de las personas que trabajan con nosotros llegan a nosotros por medio de referencias, tanto de los partners que tenemos actualmente como de estudiantes o profesores que también han utilizado TalkAbroad. Y parte de los requisitos que ellos deben tener es hablar el idioma nativo y vivir en un país de ese idioma. Entonces, todos ellos están alrededor del mundo en los diferentes países.
Okay, great. So tell me a little bit more about those requirements that you have established to be a conversation partner.
Bueno, como mencioné anteriormente, ellos tienen que ser nativos del idioma y vivir en ese país o en un país que se hable ese mismo idioma. También tener el equipo necesario, ¿verdad? Como la computadora, el micrófono, los audífonos, un internet de alta velocidad y esos serían más que todos los requisitos.
Okay, those are technical requirements. And what about other kind of criteria that you use to select the people that is going to work with you? What kind of characteristics does this person has to have in order to be a good conversation partner at TalkAbroad?
Nosotros tenemos un proceso muy estructurado en cuanto al reclutamiento. Los aspirantes necesitan hacer una aplicación, también tienen que hacer una entrevista, tienen que hacer una simulación de conversación. Luego tenemos 2 entrenamientos, uno acerca de la página web y otro acerca de ya el desempeño y las responsabilidades que van a tener ellos como partners de conversación acá. Dentro de todo este proceso, nosotros estamos viendo ciertas características, ¿verdad? Que ellos sean personas responsables, que tengan un compromiso durante todo el proceso, que sean personas pacientes y flexibles, que sean buenos conversadores también, que puedan hacer una conversación natural, fluida con un estudiante. Y también para nosotros es muy importante que ellos puedan leer instrucciones y que puedan entenderlas, porque la mayor parte de nuestra comunicación es vía escrita.
Tell me a little bit more about the training processes that you have for with the conversation partners.
Ujú. El entrenamiento nosotros lo dividimos en 4 etapas con los partners nuevos. Lo dividimos en 4 etapas y está basado en nuestra ética de TalkAbroad y también cómo pues aplicamos esta ética en nuestro trabajo. Así también como en la rúbrica de evaluación que les damos la información paso a paso para que al final de los 2 meses ellos pues puedan alcanzar un nivel de calidad bastante alto y que ya puedan interiorizar pues toda esa información y conocer con detalles qué es lo que estamos evaluando.
How does that rubric of evaluation looks like? What kind of things do you evaluate there?
Bueno, esta evaluación, rúbrica de evaluación consta de 10 áreas. Entonces, dentro de ellas vemos pues la atención, el profesionalismo que tenga la persona. También vemos lo que es tener un balance durante la conversación, de escuchar y hablar, que estén participando por igual. También el desarrollo de las preguntas y sus respuestas, ¿verdad? Que tengan también un balance, que todos puedan compartir opiniones acerca de cada tema o cada pregunta que se haga durante la conversación. También vemos la velocidad, que ellos sigan la asignación que el profesor envió en las instrucciones y también vemos lo que son los temas fuera del límite, que no se toquen temas de política, de religión, de sexo. Eso es muy importante porque son temas sensibles. Y también la parte de circunlocución, que ellos necesitan pues utilizar diferentes medios de comunicación cuando el estudiante es principiante, sobre todo en esos casos hay que utilizar otras técnicas, ¿verdad? Como mostrar fotos o usar sinónimos, todo lo que nos pueda funcionar para que el estudiante nos pueda entender y la conversación siga fluyendo en una manera natural.
Okay, great. And what methods do you have to guarantee the quality of the conversations in terms of that rubric?
Ok, nosotros tenemos el equipo de evaluación, ¿verdad? Que constantemente están escuchando los audios y viendo los videos. Ellos utilizan esta rúbrica y van poniendo pues puntos acá. Entonces tenemos metas también, ¿verdad? También tenemos evaluaciones automáticas que llegan a ellos durante el mes para que ellos puedan hacer evaluaciones aleatorias. Y también tenemos programas donde ayudamos a los partners a mejorar. Entonces, cada mes yo identifico cuáles son esas personas que necesitan un poco más de apoyo y hago un proceso con ellos de un mes, dándoles feedback cada semana. Y ahí pues les doy como ideas de cómo pueden hacerlo en una manera más apropiada o cómo pueden hacerlo en una forma más sencilla. Y todo esto, por supuesto, con la ayuda del equipo de evaluación, ¿verdad? Que también nos proveen como sus ideas de cómo pueden ellos mejorar. En caso que la actitud o que no se logren esas metas, también tenemos procesos de corrección en el que les damos pues alertas escritas, sino una suspensión e inclusive pues ya el despido. Pero afortunadamente casi nunca llegamos ahí porque ellos logran en ese mes, ¿verdad? Lograr pues las metas, entonces casi nunca es necesario llegar a ese punto.
The professors have seen and asked a lot about some things that you have on the list of partners, specifically to things such as preferred partner and advanced partner.
Uh-huh.
What does that mean?
Sí, también tenemos esos programas que, bueno, el partner preferido es un partner que ha demostrado y ha alcanzado un nivel de calidad muy alto. Tenemos requisitos, pues, altos o estrictos con ellos, ¿verdad? Como lograr buenas calificaciones y especialmente que hayan adquirido una habilidad para adecuar el nivel al nivel del estudiante, sobre todo cuando son principiantes. Entonces, ellos tienen que demostrar sus buenas habilidades para este tipo de conversaciones. Entonces, en eso se enfoca el partner preferido. Y el partner avanzado ya es un partner que más bien tienen una capacidad, ¿verdad? O la habilidad de poder discutir temas un poco más complejos con los estudiantes, tal vez por su nivel educativo. Entonces, pues esto es la idea de los partners avanzados.
You were talking a little bit about how you try to implement the TalkAbroad ethic with your team and in your area. Could you let us know a little bit better how does that look like? How do you implement TalkAbroad ethic on the human resources and training area?
Sí, nosotros tenemos, bueno, la ética es disfrutar relaciones saludables, identificadas por respeto, por compromiso y por empatía, ¿verdad? Entonces esta ética pues las aplicamos en todas las líneas de comunicación que nosotros tenemos, pero específicamente los partners, ellos necesitan pues mostrar respeto al comunicarse con los estudiantes, sobre todo en el desarrollo de los temas, ¿verdad? Que sea respetando la opinión de cada uno. La parte del compromiso, pues llegar a tiempo a la conversación, asegurarse que su equipo esté funcionando correctamente, ¿verdad? Y también investigar un poco los temas que el profesor envió para que puedan aportar algo diferente a los estudiantes. Y la parte pues de empatía, ¿verdad? Pues saber que no es tan sencillo venir a hablar con una persona que no conocemos y entonces pues tenemos que entender esa situación y tratar de hacer un ambiente lo más relajado posible para los estudiantes, ¿verdad? En el que tanto ellos como el estudiante puedan disfrutar de la conversación. Yo creo que lo más importante que siempre le decimos a los partners es que disfruten las conversaciones. Creo que cuando ellos logran disfrutar, hacen un muy buen trabajo, ¿verdad? Y los estudiantes también terminan pues muy contentos con la experiencia. Entonces eso es lo que más ponemos énfasis.
Okay, great, perfect. Thank you, Jocelyn, for your time. Thank you for sharing with us a little bit about the training and human resources area.
Con mucho gusto. Fue un placer y muchas gracias a ti por tu tiempo también. Chao.
Aber Köln ist toll. In Köln gibt es zum Beispiel den Kölner Dom. Hast du bestimmt schon von gehört?
Ja.
Ja, ganz toll, ganz groß und der ist auf jeden Fall cool. Den sollte man sich ansehen. Und in Köln gibt es auch sehr viele Kneipen. Weißt du, was eine Kneipe ist?
Ja, ein Bar in English.
Genau,
Ja.
ja, genau.
Toll.
Und du warst in München, hast du gesagt, ne? Warst du auf dem Oktoberfest?
Nein, aber mein Bruder hat nach Oktoberfest gereist.
Ah, cool. In München auf dem Oktoberfest gibt es ja so ganz große Bierkrüge.
Ja, ein Stein vielleicht? Oder eine große Tasche?
Zum Trinken, genau. Ich glaube, in Bayern nennt man das ein Maß.
Ja, ein Maß.
Genau, das ist 1 Liter, glaube ich, ungefähr, oder 0,5. Ganz viel. Ja.
Es ist groß.
Ja, genau.
Ich weiß, ja.
Und in Köln trinkt man aus ganz schmalen Gläsern. Also sind die Gläser nicht so groß, sondern ganz schmal. Ja. So hoch und ganz schmal. Also ungefähr 0,2.
Und es ist für Bier oder Wein?
Genau. Nee, das ist für Bier. In Köln trinkt man Kölsch, kein Weizen, genau. Und Köln ist auch sehr bekannt dafür, dass die Menschen sehr direkt sind. Also in Kneipen, die Kellner, die Bedienung, die Servicekräfte, die sind in Köln sehr unfreundlich.
Para ti, Shannon, ¿tú has estado en la misma ciudad siempre? ¿Naciste en tu ciudad y has vivido en la misma ciudad toda tu vida?
Cuando visitamos Guatemala, ¿qué comida?
De nuevo. ¿Tú has vivido en tu ciudad toda la vida? Por ejemplo, yo nací en Guatemala y crecí en la ciudad de Guatemala. Yo he estado en esta ciudad toda mi vida. No cambié de ciudad.
Ah, bien. No, originalmente vivo en Colorado. Me encanta las montañas. Sí, pero mi esposo trabaja en el novio, en los yachts.
En los yates.
Yates, sí. Sí, so es necesario que vivamos acerca del océano.
Claro, claro, claro. Ah, está muy bien, está bien.
Pero bien, bien. Me encanta el acento de España, es increíble.
Sí, es tan bonita.
Sí, muy, muy bonito. Y bueno, México también es muy bonito. Y es muy impresionante la diferencia entre los dialectos también.
Sí, sí, es interesante y para mi clase que están participando para este verano, necesitan hacer 4 TalkAbroads. Entonces yo tomo un país diferente cada vez. Entonces México, Guatemala, Argentina y también, no sé cómo, pienso que es El Salvador. Y todo el tiempo puede entender y las personas están entendiendo a mí, pero es interesante ver y escuchar las diferencias.
Es cierto, sí, sí, sí. Qué bien, bueno, esta es una oportunidad muy, muy bonita.
Sí, sí, yo estoy muy emocionada para tener la oportunidad de hacer TalkAbroad, porque antes de que mi clase ahora yo no sabía nada sobre TalkAbroad y eso es como un recurso muy importante para mí, especialmente porque ahora están en una área que no tenga muchas personas hispanohablantes, entonces esto es mi práctica.
Mais le dernier été, je travaille à une fromagerie.
Ok. Tu as mangé beaucoup de fromage alors? Et tu connais la différence entre les types de fromage?
Oui, il y a beaucoup de fromage.
Oh oui. Moi, je ne savais pas qu'il y avait autant avant de venir en France. En Tunisie, c'est très limité. Et en France, waouh, c'est beaucoup. Oui.
Eli, soy mexicana, soy de México, vivo al sur, al sureste de México, en un estado que se llama Yucatán. Sí. ¿Y tú, Eli, dónde vives?
Vivo en Sur, Florida.
Bien, muy bien. ¿En Boca Ratón?
Sí, 20 minutos en Boca Ratón.
Bien, muy, muy bien. ¿Y tu familia? ¿Tú vives con tu familia, Eli?
Sí, vivo con mi familia.